Think about the last time someone told you your family has a long history. Maybe it was a grandparent tracing roots back 4 generations, 5 generations, 100 years, 200. That feels ancient to us. We frame it in sepia photographs and handwritten names in a family Bible. Now think about a lineage that doesn't stretch back 200 years. Think about a family tree that doesn't have photographs, because photography didn't exist when it began. Think about a family tree that doesn't have a written record, because writing didn't exist when it began. Think about a family tree where the first branch was formed before agriculture, before cities, before the wheel, before the domestication of the dog. You are now thinking about the San people of southern Africa, and you are still not thinking far enough back. Their ancestry doesn't go back to the pyramids. It doesn't go back to the last ice age. Their ancestry goes back to the very moment our species became a species. They are the oldest humans on Earth, and the proof is not in a cave painting or a stone tool. The proof is inside their cells. The proof is in your cells. And what that proof just revealed is that the story of you almost didn't happen at all. Here is the modern reality. You live in a world of nearly 8 billion people. From the window of an airplane at 35,000 feet, the cities below look like circuit boards. Millions of lights, millions of lives. We think of humanity as vast, sprawling, unstoppable. We talk about the human race like it's an ocean without edges. But geneticists will tell you something unsettling. The ocean is a puddle. The vastness is an illusion. If you take any 2 random humans from anywhere on the planet, a fisherman in Norway and a school teacher in Japan, a farmer in Nigeria and a banker in New York, the amount of genetic difference between them is so small as to be almost statistically irrelevant. We are, as a species, shockingly uniform. We are inbred on a planetary scale. But there is one group of people who break that pattern. And when scientists first sequenced their DNA, they thought the machine was broken, because one man carried more genetic variety in his single body than the entire population of Europe and Asia combined could produce, across all their billions of genomes. His name, for the purposes of the study, was not given. He was one of 4 San elders from the Kalahari Desert, and his DNA told a story that rewrote human history. So here is the pivot. Here is the impossible ancient situation I want to place you in. Imagine standing on a dry lake bed in southern Africa. It is not a desert yet, but it is becoming one. The ground is cracked. The heat shimmers in waves off the red earth. You are looking at a small group of people, maybe 40, maybe 50. They are not farmers. They have no fields, no domesticated animals, no permanent shelters. They are hunters, and they are gatherers. They communicate in a language that sounds like music made of clicks and pops, a language so complex that linguists today still argue about how to classify it. These people are your ancestors. These people are my ancestors. These people are the ancestors of every single human being alive today, from the people building rockets in California to the people fishing in the Mekong Delta. They are the original human population, and their genetic footprint is so profound that it is still detectable in every single one of your cells right now. And yet, at the moment you are standing there, watching them, they are almost extinct. Their entire breeding population could fit in a single high school gymnasium. The human race was down to a few thousand individuals. A bad drought, a new disease, a volcanic winter. Any one of a dozen catastrophes would have erased us completely. And the only reason we know this is because the people standing in that lake bed, the people whose descendants still walk the Kalahari today, carry the record of that near-death experience inside their DNA. They are a living archive of the moment the future almost didn't exist. Let me give you the first impossibility, the impossibility of survival. In the year 2000 BCE, give or take a century, something happened in Africa that would define the next 4,000 years of human history. A massive migration began. From the region we now call West Africa, a group of people known as the Bantu speakers started moving. They had agriculture, they had iron tools, they had cattle, they had numbers. They moved east and they moved south, across a quarter of a continent, absorbing or displacing almost every other human group in their path. This is one of the greatest population expansions in human history, comparable to the European colonization of the Americas, but far older, far longer, and far more complete. The Bantu expansion did not just change the map of Africa, it erased it and redrew it. Today, the enormous majority of people living in southern and eastern Africa speak Bantu languages. Their genetic signature dominates the continent. The people who lived there before the Bantu arrived, the people who had inhabited those lands for tens of thousands of years, were largely absorbed. Their languages died, their cultures mixed into the new arrivals. They became, almost entirely, a genetic memory. Almost. But not entirely, because in one place, the absorption stopped. In one place, the Bantu expansion hit a wall that it could not pass. That wall was not an army, it was not a mountain range, it was a desert, the Kalahari. A vast, semi-arid wilderness covering parts of Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. To the Bantu farmers, with their cattle and their crops, the Kalahari was hostile. There was no reliable water for their herds, no fertile soil for their fields. It was, to them, useless territory. So they stopped. They settled the edges. And deep inside, in a landscape of thorn scrub and sand and salt pans, a small group of people continued to live exactly as their ancestors had lived for 200,000 years. They were the San. They were the last, unabsorbed remnant of the original human population of Africa. And because they were pushed into such an inhospitable place, because no one else wanted that place, their gene pool remained isolated. It remained pure. It remained the closest thing to an original human genome that the modern world would ever know. So here is the second impossibility. The impossibility of variety. And this is where the science gets genuinely hard to comprehend. In 2010, a team of scientists published a paper in the journal Nature. The lead author was a geneticist named Stephan Schuster, and his team had sequenced the genomes of several individuals from southern Africa. One of them was Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the famous human rights activist, who belongs to a Bantu-speaking group. The others were 4 elders from San communities in the Kalahari. The results made headlines around the world, but for geneticists, one detail nearly caused them to fall out of their chairs. The San genomes contained an enormous number of genetic variants that had never been seen before in any previously sequenced human. Not a handful, not a few dozen. The San genomes carried roughly 13% more novel variants than any human genome that had ever been sequenced up to that point. 13% more. Think about that. Every other genome ever sequenced up to 2010 included people from Europe, Asia, Africa, the Americas. Thousands of genomes. And a single San elder had 13% more entirely new genetic information than any of them. That is not a subtle difference. That is a category error. That is the difference between a small-town library and the Library of Congress. But it gets stranger. The San are not just genetically diverse in a general sense. They carry the deepest, oldest branches of the human family tree. Every person alive today inherits their mitochondrial DNA, the small loop of genetic material in the energy-producing part of the cell, from their mother. And every maternal lineage on Earth can be traced back to a common ancestor. But those lineages are not all the same age. They form a tree, with branches that split at different times. The deepest, oldest root of that entire tree is a lineage called L0. And L0, scientists found, is found almost exclusively, and in its most ancient forms, in San populations. The L0 lineage diverged from all other human maternal lineages between 150,000 and 260,000 years ago. That is not a typo. 150,000 to 260,000 years ago. Long before the first cave paintings. Long before the first musical instruments. Long before the first humans left Africa. At that impossible depth of time, the mothers of the San bloodline were already a distinct group, carrying a genetic heritage that would be passed down, unbroken, to a woman living in the Kalahari today. That woman carries the oldest unbroken line of maternal descent on Earth. Her great-great-great-grandmother, repeated so many times you cannot pronounce the number, was alive when our species had not yet finished becoming our species. But wait, there is more. In 2011, a team led by a geneticist named Brenna Henn published a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The title was blunt. Hunter-gatherer genomic diversity suggests a southern African origin for modern humans. And the data inside was even blunter. They found that the genetic diversity within San populations is so extreme that it exceeds the genetic diversity of all non-African populations combined. Let me slow that down so it lands completely. All of Europe, all of Asia, all of the Americas, all of Oceania, every single person whose ancestors left Africa, every population that migrated across continents, founded civilizations, built cities, fought wars, created art, every single one of those people, combined, carries less genetic variation than the San people of the Kalahari. A single Juhoansi individual, one person from one San group, carries more genetic variation in their DNA than a Chinese person and a European person combined could produce. Two people from opposite ends of Eurasia, separated by 10,000 kilometers of mountains and deserts and oceans, are genetically more similar to each other than one San individual is to another San individual living in the next valley over. Think about that. The entire drama of human diversity, the skin tones, the eye shapes, the hair textures, the lactose tolerance, the altitude adaptations, all of it fits inside a tiny fraction of what the San carry in their own community. This is the smoking gun for the origin of our species. Here is how the logic works. Every time a small group of humans migrates away from a larger group, they take only a fraction of the genetic variation with them. It's called the founder effect. Imagine a jar full of thousands of different colored beads. You reach in and scoop out a handful to start a new jar. That new jar has fewer colors than the original. It will never have more. It only loses colors over time, generation after generation. The human species did this repeatedly. Every time a group left Africa, it was a handful of beads leaving the jar. That is why non-Africans are so similar. They are descended from those small handfuls. And the jar itself, the original source of all the beads, is still sitting in southern Africa. It is still full. It has been accumulating new colors, new variants, new mutations, for 300,000 years. And it has never been emptied. The San are that jar. The scientific term is the origin of modern humans, and while scientists debate the details, the 2017 paper by Schlebusch and colleagues in the journal Science put a number on it. Modern humans as a distinct group emerged in southern Africa between 350,000 and 260,000 years ago. That is where our story begins. That is the place where the first modern human genome took shape. And the people living there today are not a relic. They are not a historical curiosity. They are the trunk of the tree. The rest of us are branches. Now here is the third impossibility. The impossibility that you exist at all. This is the "we almost weren't" part of the story. And it is not a metaphor. It is written in the San genome as clearly as a scar is written on skin. About 74,000 years ago, give or take a few thousand years, a volcano exploded. It was not a normal volcano. It was Lake Toba on the island of Sumatra, and geologists believe it was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in the last 25 million years. It ejected an estimated 2,800 cubic kilometers of magma into the sky. The ash cloud covered Southeast Asia in meters of debris. Sulfur dioxide circled the globe. The sun dimmed. Temperatures dropped. Plants died. Animals died. And according to one of the most debated hypotheses in paleoanthropology, the human population crashed with them. The Toba catastrophe theory suggests that the global human breeding population may have shrunk to as few as 1,000 to 10,000 individuals. Not total population, breeding population. The number of people actually producing the next generation. 1,000 people. 10,000 people, you could fit them all in a stadium. You could lose them all in a single wave of disease or a single decade of failed rains. And the reason geneticists know something like this happened is because the human genome shows the evidence of a bottleneck, a narrowing, a moment when the genetic diversity of our species shrank dramatically, then began to rebuild. The whole species nearly went extinct, and the evidence is still there, in all of our DNA. But it is sharpest, clearest, most undeniable in the DNA of the San, because the San were there. They are the ones who made it through. But the Toba eruption was not the only brush with extinction. It was not even the first. The climate in Africa over the last 300,000 years has not been stable. It has swung between wet and dry, green and brown, over and over. Ice ages locked water into glaciers, far to the north and south, and Africa dried out. Forests shrank. Grasslands expanded. Deserts grew. Each cycle would have destroyed populations, isolated groups, squeezed the human species into smaller and smaller refugia, places with reliable water, places with food. Southern Africa, particularly the region around the modern Kalahari, appears to have been one of those refugia. Time and again, when the planet turned hostile, the ancestors of the San survived. They didn't just survive, they endured. They carried the human project through its darkest chapters. They were the pilot light that refused to go out, and every human alive today, including you, is descended from that flame. Think about that. Every single one of the 8 billion people on this planet is the descendant of a tiny, improbable, near-extinct group of people who lived in southern Africa while the rest of the world went dark. And if you want proof, look at your own genome. Every human being who has ever been tested carries some genetic material that traces back to the L0 lineage. The oldest human maternal line is in every single one of us. The San are not just our cousins, they are our great-great-great-grandparents, 1,000 times over. But here is the thing, their survival was not an accident, it was earned. It was written in their genes through the slow, brutal process of natural selection. Because the San were not just lucky, they were adapted. And their adaptations are a window into the world our ancestors lived in. The world of the Kalahari. Let me give you a specific example. The San carry genetic variants that make them extraordinarily efficient at clearing uric acid from their blood. Now, this sounds like a minor detail. It is not. Uric acid is a byproduct of breaking down purines, which are found in meat. A diet rich in game meat, lean antelope, small mammals, birds, produces a lot of purines and therefore a lot of uric acid. In most people, high uric acid leads to gout, kidney stones, joint pain. But the San have been eating that kind of diet for tens of thousands of years. Their ancestors ate that diet. Their genes have been shaped by it. They can process protein-heavy meals in a way that would make most modern humans sick. They also carry specific copies of genes related to salivary amylase, the enzyme that begins breaking down starches in the mouth. That sounds contradictory, right? Why would desert hunter-gatherers need adaptations for starch digestion? Because the San are not pure carnivores. They are foragers, and one of their most reliable food sources in the Kalahari is roots and tubers, underground storage organs that need to be dug up, often in brutal heat, and then digested. Starchy, fibrous, tough. The San genome has been shaped by the need to extract every possible calorie from those roots, and every possible gram of protein from the animals they hunt. They are living, breathing records of a human ecology that no longer exists anywhere else on Earth. So now let me bring you back. Back to the modern world. Back to the present day, where the San people number around 100,000 individuals, spread across Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. They still speak languages built on clicks, languages with names like Juhoansi, Zulu, and Naro. Linguists believe these click languages may be among the oldest surviving human languages on the planet, not because they are primitive, but because they are deeply complex, layered with sounds no other language uses, surviving in isolated pockets the same way the genes survive. And yet, the modern world is not kind to them. They have been pushed off their land. Their hunting rights have been restricted. Their children are educated in languages that are not their own. Their genetic treasure, the thing that makes them the richest population on Earth in terms of human history, has made them the subject of medical research and pharmaceutical interest, often without meaningful benefit flowing back to them. They are the oldest continuous lineage of humans on the planet, the keepers of the original human genome, living in what is often excruciating poverty on the margins of countries that do not always recognize their claims to land they have occupied for 300,000 years. The contrast is almost too painful to articulate. The people who saved the human species, who carried our entire future through the ice ages and the supervolcano, are among the most marginalized people on Earth today. That is not just an injustice. It is a species-level ingratitude. Here is the thing I want you to hold in your mind. When you look at a map of Africa, when you see the Kalahari Desert, you are not looking at the edge of something. You are looking at the center of the human story. And when you look at your own hands, your own face in the mirror, you are looking at a descendant of the people who lived there before anything else happened. Before writing, before farming, before the first boat touched water. Look at your hands, flex your fingers, feel the muscles work. That exact anatomy, the shape of your hand, the structure of your brain, the length of your stride, it was all forged in the crucible of southern Africa. It was tested against drought and wildfire and cold and hunger. It was nearly canceled, over and over, by forces the universe threw at it. And it survived. It survived because a tiny band of humans, whose descendants still live in the Kalahari, refused to die. They ate roots. They tracked antelope for days across the sand. They made music with clicks. They told stories that we can no longer hear. And they passed down their DNA, through unbroken chains of mothers and fathers, across 200,000 years, across 100,000 generations, until it reached you. Now think about the genetic diversity point one more time, because it is the key that unlocks the whole story. You are less diverse than them. Every person listening to this is less diverse than them. The entire sweep of human history, every empire, every war, every migration, every invention, produced less genetic variation than a single sand community living beside a salt pan in the middle of nowhere. That is not because we did something wrong. It is because we left. We took a handful of beads and started new jars, and every new jar was a little less colorful than the last. The original jar, the one that held all the colors, never moved. It stayed in the same place for 300,000 years. It is still there. The most ancient human population on Earth is not hidden in some inaccessible mountain range or at the bottom of an ocean. It is in the Kalahari Desert, speaking languages made of clicks, living in the same landscape where our species began. And the only reason their DNA has just revealed all of this is because we finally started looking. We finally started paying attention. We finally started to understand that the people we had dismissed as primitive were actually the most sophisticated survivors the planet has ever produced. They are not a remnant, they are the source. The rest of us are the offshoot. And here is the final thought. The next time someone tells you that all humans are the same, you now know that is both true and false. It is true because we are all one species, and our differences are a tiny fraction of our totality. But it is false in a very specific and important way. The San are more of what it means to be human than the rest of us. They carry more of our species' history in their cells. They carry more of our species' potential. They are the deep end of the human gene pool, and the rest of us are waiting in the shallows. When geneticists want to understand what a truly variable, truly resilient, truly original human genome looks like, they do not go to a major city. They do not go to a laboratory in Cambridge or Shanghai. They go to the Kalahari. They go to a small community of hunter-gatherers who have lived the same way since before the first word was written. And those people, those elders, those mothers and fathers, are not just a scientific resource. They are the reason you are alive. They are the reason humanity is alive. They held the line through the worst the planet could throw at us. And when the world finally warmed and the ice retreated and the surviving groups began to move, they were the ones left behind, not because they failed, but because they chose to stay. They chose to remain in the homeland. They are the original humans, and their DNA has just revealed that we almost weren't. The next time you think about human history, do not start with the pyramids. Do not start with the first cities. Start with a salt pan in southern Africa. Start with a click. Start with the people who carried us through the dark. That's the contrast. Then and now. Your DNA and theirs. If this changed how you think about time, subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Thanks for staying until the very end. Goodbye for now.